Chapter 28. America and a World at War. War on two fronts. There was a Japanese advance into Allied territory in the Pacific, and they had control of this territory. So, the U.S. had two offensives planned by Douglas MacArthur and Chester Nimitz. The Allied offensives at Midway and Guadalcanal stopped the Japanese advance. In the South and Central Pacific are now under U.S. control. The Soviet Union wants the Allies to invade France immediately, and the British plan an assault on the Nazi Empire, first in North Africa and then in South Europe. Americans agree to the British plan. This offensive drives Germans from Africa, and there's a postponement of their France invasion. The Germans suffer losses in Eastern Offensive, and they could not continue. The Soviet Union has a victory at a terrible cost. They had the most casualties of any nation. The Casablanca Conference, America and Britain plan an Allied invasion of Sicily. So the Allies invade Italy to divide the German forces from France, and they captured Sicily and Rome. So they postponed their invasion of France, angering the Soviet Union, and who absorbed the brunt of the fighting, so they moved toward countries of Eastern Europe. America does little to aid the Jews, and as well as other victims during the Holocaust. Instead of destroying the crematoria or railroads, their energy is focused on winning the war to save the most lives. The American people in wartime. So there's a war-induced economic recovery. Federal spending causes an influx in the gross national product and personal income, etc. There's a $40 billion investment in the West, more than in any other region, so their economy is transformed. The West is also the center of the airplane and shipbuilding industries. The war creates a labor shortage at home. The young, elderly, and women are in the workforce because men are at war. There's union membership growth, but with wartime limits to keep production going, limit wage increases, etc. The War Labor Disputes Act, or the Smith-Connolly Act, required unions to wait 30 days before striking and empowered the president to seize a struck war plant. The Office of Price Administration enforces the Anti-Inflation Act, which has the power to freeze prices, wages, salaries, and rents. However, this inflates the problem. The Revenue Act of 1942 increases the income tax, which was never popular. They had to ration scarce goods. And federal spending was funded by bonds and income tax, and debt increases exponentially. The War Production Board is created to control the economy. However, it is not as successful as the War Industry Board in World War I. The Army and the Navy negotiate contracts with producers, and there are small business complaints. The authority of the War Production Board is transferred to the Office of War Mobilization. Despite administrative problems, the board managed to meet all war needs, even to the extent of having excess. The National Defense Research Committee puts more money into research and development. And the Germans and the Japanese have advanced military weapons, so the Allied engineers improve ours and greatly expand production. The Allied radar and sonar eliminate the German U-boat effectiveness, and the Allied advantage in the air. The Allies had an advantage in the air with a high production of bombers. They can fly higher and longer. They have a better navigation system that doubles their accuracy. Britain's Ultra project, through its use of the improved decoder called the bomb, informs the Allies of German intelligence and information and secrets. The United States magic operation breaks the Japanese coding system, and it intercepts important information. A. Philip Randolph demands the integration of workforces by the government and threatens a march on Washington. So FDR enacts the Fair Employment Practices Commission, which is a victory for African Americans demanding the government. The Congress of Racial Equality mobilizes resistance to discrimination, and the African American made gains in military because their manpower is needed. There is partial integration in the military and an increase in African American servicemen. Native Americans participated in the war as code talkers by using their own language so that the enemy would not understand what they're talking about. They served in the military or in war plants. However, with contact with white society brought pressure to assimilate because of the drive for national unity. Because of the wartime labor shortage, we hired Mexicans, known as braceros, in the contract labor system. Mexican street gangs called pachucos, wearing their zoot suits. White fear causes these zoot suit riots. There's a dramatic increase in female employment. However, their jobs are still categorized by gender. The symbol of women in the industrial workforce was Rosie the Riveter, with her poster, "We Can Do It." There were so-called government girls in service jobs, the development of female communities, and some even serve in the military. Because women work, children are in child care, so they are called latchkey kids or 8-hour orphans, or they are left at home or even in cars. There's an increase in juvenile crime, an increase in teens in the workforce, and the beginning of the baby boom because of prosperity. There were economic good times. Work provided money to spend, and they had dance halls and bands. Men are fighting for home and the future of prosperity. They look at pictures of or even performances by pinup girls like Betty Grable. The company of women was believed to be the key to maintaining morale in the army, so they had dance brigades to have company with women. The enemy is not seen as Germans and Italians, but rather the political system of their mother countries. However, the Japanese are seen as cruel people and responsible for their country's attack. The government pressures FDR into creating the War Relocation Authority, which starts Japanese internment camps. The American alliance with China leads to the Chinese Exclusion Acts being repealed, and racial animosity towards them declines. There's a shift from a focus on reform to a focus on winning the war. Conservative Republicans dismantle New Deal achievements. FDR accepts the diminishing New Deal to win support for war policies. In the 1944 election, we have FDR and his Vice President Truman versus Thomas Dewey. Despite his failing health, FDR wins, and the Democrats control both houses in the Congress. The defeat of the Axis. Strategic bombings by Allies on Germany, and therefore cutting production and impeding transportation, equals a weakening of German Air Force. The Allied attack at Normandy surprises the Germans, and the Allies prevail, and Germans are driven out of France and Belgium. This will in the future be known as D-Day. The Allied troops join the Soviet offensive, and the German forces surrender unconditionally. In the Battle of Leyte Gulf in the Pacific, the Japanese fleet is against Allied invaders. The Americas destroy Japan's ability for a serious naval war. So Americans seize Iwo Jima and Okinawa, suffering serious casualties. So then America begins what was called the Manhattan Project, the race to build atomic weapons. The Trinity bomb is the first weapon. In the Potsdam Conference, Allied leaders, including now President Truman because of FDR's death previously, issue an ultimatum to Japan: unconditional surrender or complete devastation. However, Japan does not surrender, and so America drops atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And after those two bombs, Japan finally surrenders, and the U.S. emerges victorious as one of the most powerful and influential powers in the world.